it's Sarah Kin and Antir. We're here with the sisters interview. I'm hosting with my sister, Aishaxi, or the Laurel Vontier, and tonight we have a very special guest, Jarl Ulfred. Now that you've like struggled with it, I'm going to struggle with it. Dromfaller. Hopefully that's right. Ulfred was the architect of the whole Sport of Kings event. He's a master woodworker. He's a pelican. He served as Prince of Vontier. He served as King of Vontier. And he's just a very, very, very cool person and really a pillar of Vontier. And we're just so excited to have him here tonight. So we usually start these, Ulfred, with your origin story. So if you want to tell us how you found the SCA and when, that would be great.
Okay. I was attending Oregon State University, and I was living in a cooperative house, 60 guys in a group setting, and one of the fellows that lived there was this guy I didn't really know real well, but he went off one weekend and came back later with some photos and was showing us all these photos of this thing he did on Memorial Day, and it sounded sort of interesting and fun, and he would show us this picture, and there'd be this picture, and there'd be this little tiny figure way off in a field, and he'd say, "Oh, that's Sir Frederick of the West Tower, and he's a knight, and he's out there waiting to take on a challenger, you know." And I go, "Okay, if that's what you tell me." and then he got to a picture and he showed me, and it was this picnic table, and this picnic table was just loaded with food, and the main dish was a whole roast pig with an apple in its mouth on a big platter, and I said, "Oh, I got to go to this thing." So he and me and oh, and by the way, the fellow's name was Sir Dublin O'Gwyn, and he of course not at that time, but he recruited me, and Master totally spaced now. Anyway, Sir Ludwig von Lemminghaus, and another fellow who didn't stay around for more than a year or two, but and we started up a little group there in Corvallis, but there was a lot of the closest group was down in Eugene. They were relatively young. They would come up, throw gear on us, and push us out there to do things and stuff. I mean, you know, the whole region had 30 people in it, right? You know, between Eugene and us four, and
about what year was this?
Well, this would have been 75. So, because I saw those pictures, but I didn't actually. It was later in the fall. He called me up. I was back home up in Portland, and he called me up and said there's this event that's up there, and it was coronation or coronet tournament. It also happened to be coronation tournament too. It was and it was actually the first coronet that Sir Edward Zifron won. Wow. And I wasn't able to get out there on Saturday because I was working, but I went out on Sunday, and it was quite the thing. I got there, and all these people, you know, they all very friendly and greeted me and stuff, but they were like, "Shh, we're being very quiet. The prince isn't up yet, and we don't want to disturb him." and so we all had to speak softly and walk carefully and everything, and eventually then the prince awoke and came out and had his coffee and cigarette and and life could resume. But it was a special coronet in that they fought on Saturday and he won and they coroneted him on Saturday. So so that's why I say it was a coronet and coronation. There were some circumstances I don't know. I don't remember why they did it that way.
Was the Crown of the West up for it?
No, it was very, very small, very local. Yeah, there was, folks down from Seattle, a few up from Eugene, I imagine, but I didn't know anybody. So, it wasn't until later that I started to get some names associated with. Actually, it was sort of difficult because I met the people, but I had no names. And then later on, I had names. And over time, the names and the people maybe got attached to each other. Maybe they didn't too. So, but anyway. But yeah, and so that whole sequence of talking about it was really, I saw the pictures, got excited about that. Then I went to that event, and then that's when, then the next spring back in, I went back down to Oregon State, and that's when we started doing things. And I went to the second Eagles tournament since I hadn't been there for the first one, and then from that, then I was sort of I was the guy on campus, or well, I shouldn't say on campus. I was the guy in our little group that had a car. So it became a big thing to load up on the weekends and drive to Seattle or even up to Lionsgate or drive down to Eugene, and because those are really where everything happened, in Portland, and just take along folks. We would recruit folks there in our house or friends of folks in the house and head out. It was just a little. It was a Ford Capri, and it, you could get 5 in if the back seat 3 people were really cozy because it was a 2-door, and they had to jam in there. But we did a lot of traveling. We hit the road. So.
How long did it take you to get into armor?
Spring. One of the first things. When back down at Corvallis, one of the first things that happened was the Eugene folks came up to have a little revel in one of the parks there, and they brought some spare gear, and I was busy running around trying to figure out how I could protect my elbows and knees. They said, well, you're going to have to get something for your knees and elbows, and I didn't have any athletic equipment or anything, so I made some pads and stuff to pull on, and I got over there, and they had this helmet, and and I stuffed my head in it. It was actually built for a lady's 13-year-old daughter, and and so when I slid it on, my nose was pressed really flat to my face, and it didn't rattle around, but they gave me a shield and a sword and a couple of instructions about maybe things I should or shouldn't do. And mind you, they muddied the waters because there was, well, here's the rules for the kingdom, or for the principality, excuse me, not kingdom at that point. And but we like to play with I think we called it Adianta Moore rules, but anyway, those were a lot looser. So in the first engagement that I ever did there was, I think there were 4 of us that were in gear at once, and so it was 2 on 2, and there was a brief exchange of actual weapon stuff, and then I ended up sitting on somebody's chest and smacking them in the head with the shield, but it was okay because we were working under that set of rules.
And thus the Badger was born. That's awesome.
But subsequently, that was probably the most unfettered that my armored combat was in that range. But yeah, we had a that was, I thought that was great. I never wanted to wear that helmet again. I didn't either, but but that was it too, right? You throw a helmet on, you throw some elbow pads on, and you were good to go. I mean, the knee pads were just a good idea. They weren't required, so nothing on the hands. Just
Did you come in with a history of playing sports? Had you done any sports in high school or college?
No, I was actually had a history of non-sports. I liked sports. I was interested in sports, but I wasn't able to do them when I was younger, and I was starting to do sports at OSU, intramural kinds of pickup rat ball, basketball kind of games and stuff, and because the guys I lived with did that. And so, but I was not good at sports, and so this was exciting because, well, nobody was really all that good at this sport. and there were no expectations, right? So on that level, you had a little bit of that engagement, the what do you call it, the jock experience, I guess, without really being that way. But yeah, I mean, doing the intramural sports, I really there at college, you'd run into guys that you just really didn't like to play with. The frats would field a team and they'd come out and brutalize you and stuff. So this case where we got to brutalize each other, but everybody was really nice about it, and afterwards they'd hug you and give you a beer. That was a pinnacle of good for me.
100 people.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anyway, and then like I say, and from then it was just we would travel as we could afford. Really, was what it came down to. And costumes were costumes were as they could be. My actual first persona, as we sat around the table and tried to think of personas to be, but my first actual persona was the Abbot of Costello. And we even looked, there is a Costello, Spain, and we figured they must have a monastery. And yeah, and but I abandoned that fairly quickly because I realized that I wasn't raised Catholic. I really didn't know anything about being an abbot or a monk or a cleric, and I felt a little bit like, yeah, this isn't really the direction I want to go. So then I became Charlie the Undecided because I couldn't come up with a last name. So that was sort of bestowed on me. But
Awesome. When did you come up with Ulfred?
That was that was probably a year and a half or 2 years in. I was back in Portland by then, and really trying to come up with a legitimate persona name, and I'd settled on a Norse background, and the mechanism wasn't particularly historical. I went down to the library at PSU and looked in language books, and butchered Swedish probably by putting together Drom and Fjell, and Fjell being a mountain and Drom being dream or moon, depending on the context, apparently. at least in the translation dictionary, that's what it is said. But so it happens that I had my device before I had my name. And so I thought, well, that works very well because my device had the dragon basically in front of a full moon over a mountain. And so
That's
I
perfect.
thought, oh, well, Dream Mountain or Moon Mountain, I mean, it works either way. and Ulfred, well, my real name being Alfred, wasn't too hard of a stretch to sort of transmute that. And I did finally find a historical Saint Ulfred, but he was actually from France and a lot later. But
What drove you to Norse Viking?
Actually, probably my early interest when I was growing up, I really liked Greek mythology and Norse mythology. And read the stories of the gods and heroes and stuff. And at that point in time, I probably was reading comics about Thor and stuff too. Well, in fact, I know I was because I was reading comics before I was in college. But just the heroic sagas and all that had been an attraction to me. So, and then of course there were a lot of on Tyr even back then had a lot of Celto-Norse folks running around. So that fit with the culture. And by that point, by the time I came up with my name, I had met Steingrim Stellari, and we were hanging out, and so that also made sense. Out in the Red, I'd met him and Sir Steingrim and some other Norse folks in the Three Mountains area. And so it just seemed like it fit with the current culture, and I had always been interested in the stories and stuff. So that's what mostly influenced me, because my family heritage is really Italian, and I really should have been probably a little more Romanesque or something, but anyway.
Here we are. At what point did you meet Dak? Was he not playing then, or was he?
He was not around. Yeah, that came later. And honestly, my timelines are really, really not very good. But it was probably. Trying to think, it would have been maybe in 78, 79, or maybe a little later, like 80. But I don't think so. So the way I met Dak was we were up at an event in Ravenna Park up in it was a day event at Madrona, and I don't even remember which event it was, but out fighting all day and kicking around. Afterward, well, actually, I was still fighting. Now that I think about it, I was still in armor, and I was about to stop, and Torgal came up and says, "I've got this new kid. You got to fight him. I want you to fight him. I've been waiting all day to have him fight you and stuff." And it was like, well, okay, and so we went over and we sparred, and he was this skinny kid in armor that Torgal had helped him put him in, and he had a goofy grin on his face the whole time, and had a good time, and that was the first time I met him. So.
And he stuck around.
Yeah, he had a good time. Yeah. So and I don't even remember what else we did after that. I'm sure we went to somebody's house to have afters, or probably hung out and drank beers with them or something. But honestly, I don't remember. So yeah.
So how long during this time, Montier is just sort of starting out, right?
Mhm.
When did you start fighting in coronets?
Oh, pretty much as soon as I could. I had to get authorized, and well, I'm not going to remember the timeline, but I actually, we really very early on in that, and I wish I remembered the dates, but I had, we back up from the DAC thing a little bit, but in 76, it would have been 76, we took a trip. So I knew Thorgeir the Thirsty at this point. He was one of the first people I met, which was, we went down to a little revel in the park down in Eugene. And here again, I was driving. As we drive up into this little park, and I'm sort of nervous a little bit because, you know, I hadn't been to this park before, but we get there and we drive in, and this big old Viking, you know, he's got chainmail, he's got an axe in a hand, he's got a metal cap helm, he's got a drinking horn in the other, and he walks out of the parking lot in front of us and holds his arms wide, and he goes, "Oh, Hilsa friends, welcome," you know, and hands us his horn. "You have a drink," and it was like, wow, these guys are really friendly down here. And but anyway, so he was one of the early people that we would often hang out with. And Thorgeir and Dublin and I and Steingrim decided to take a trip. And Steingrim was Prince at this point in time. He had stepped up as Prince of Untier. I hadn't actually met him yet, I don't believe, at that point in time. I heard of him, but I hadn't hung out with him. And Thorgeir and Steingrim wanted to go down to the west, to Crown down at the west. And the week after Crown, I think it was, to get these in the right order, the week after Crown was a wedding on Lake Tahoe at Viking Home. Is a little, somebody built basically a home down there on a little bay of Lake Tahoe, and did it in Norwegian architecture and everything. And they had gotten somebody was having a wedding. I don't even remember who it was, but we're having an SCA wedding down there, and all the people down in the Bay Area, well, I shouldn't say all, but a large number of people from the Bay Area were going to this wedding the week after Crown. But anyway, so we went on this epic trip. I'm trying to remember, get back to the main line. We went on this trip, the four of us, in Thorgeir's 1950 something or other Studebaker truck, which he had repaired enough to drive. And it didn't have a canopy or anything on the back, so he built a little Viking A-frame as a canopy and put that on the back of the truck. And we threw all our gear in there, and so two guys could ride up in the front and two guys could lay in the bed of the truck. And we drove off down to the Bay Area, and that was and so why I got into this is because it was on that trip that I couldn't fight at Crown. I didn't have any gear, but the week in between Crown and this wedding, we were crashing at James Greyholm's house. So, and he, being an armorer, he helped us put together enough armor that I would be able to fight at this wedding the next weekend. So, and part of that would be I would be able to get certified for fighting at that. I could get my card, so to speak, and and although we were a lot looser back then about all of the officialness. And so that was where I actually got authorized so that I could then participate in kingdom wide events and get into cornet. So in those days, it was expressed that it is your duty as a fighter to enter all coronets.
Oh, wow.
And because how could you know that you had the right person as prince if you didn't all go out to test their mettle, right? And make sure that they were the person that should be there. So this, at least this is how it was presented to me. And so, it wasn't really, nobody could force you per se, right? But it was your duty. It was expected. So and there was, over the years, it got to be that, well, you shouldn't enter coronet or crown unless you really are prepared to rule and everything. Well, nobody was really too concerned about that at the time. Not that it was still true, you had to be prepared to serve it, but it didn't have as much of a burden as it did later, right? Because they were 3 reigns a year in Antir then.
Really?
And so they were short, and so they didn't cost you a lot of money. So and retinue wise, retinue is whoever was there at the event to be your retinue, right? Because you're the prince, so everybody is part of your nobility and stuff. So you didn't have dedicated to the same degree that is the case now.
Right.
Retinue and stuff, and it's because it's a much bigger bureaucracy now. So.
That's a little crazy.
Yeah.
When did Antir switch from 3 reigns to 2?
Say that again. When?
Yeah.
When? That happened in my 2nd reign as prince. I decided that 3 was not working as well as it could, because that meant we had a spring in wet weather and a fall in wet weather, and then a July coronation and tournament in there in the middle. But anyway, just from my perspective, I was prince and I changed the laws and I moved us to 2 reigns a year, because it felt like it was getting to the point where there was no opportunity for people to really sort of get up to speed before they were there, right? Because boom, boom. And I know they were still doing it down the west and everything, but it just, and then with the weather, it felt like we were always having some horrible experience on a weekend to pick out our next prince and princess and all that kind of stuff. So it just, and Qaid was doing it, and so I knew that it was an option, right? It didn't have to be the tradition, and so caught some flack because it's not like I pulled the barons or anything like that. I just did it, but later on, I suggested to Prince Trelawn that I said, if you really want to be popular, you'll change it back to 3 reigns a year, because I got so much flack, they must all hate it. And then I caught a bunch of flack for suggesting that. So I guess it worked out. But he declined to do that. So, yeah, so.
What are some other things that you instituted during any of your reigns that that's a big one. That's a huge culture shift thing.
Yeah, that was yeah, that was probably the most significant. There were little things that were not permanent things, like it was very unpopular when I outlawed thrusting in one of the principality coronets. That was in probably my first reign as prince, I believe, when I said no thrusting in the next one. And it was unpopular because they were starting to do a lot of thrusting up in Lionsgate. But down here we were sticking with the edges is king, right? You know? And yeah, so but I wasn't going to make a permanent or try and make a permanent thing on that kind of a thing. That was just within the prerogative of how I wanted to run the next one, right? Kind of a deal. So actually that might have been my second one, actually, now that I think about it. So this would have been when I was king. One of the significant things I did and was the Whimsical Order of the Alien Wit was actually originally the Order of the Alien Wit, which was a Shire award for wastekeep. And I was spending a lot of time traveling out to wastekeep and hanging out with those folks, and I just loved the heck out of all of them. And I thought this was such a fun little thing that they had going there that I basically elevated it to a kingdom level award and retagged it. There is an OAW already that existed, although I couldn't tell you what it stood for now. But so I added whimsical because it was my whim to do this, and that seemed to actually take on its own life. That one has stuck around a long time,
Yeah.
With ups and downs and stuff. But you know, there were other things I did that I don't remember so much, but I think in general, despite some radical shifts and things like that I did, I was really more of a traditionalist. I was not an on-tier rebellion person. I was actually more of a West royalist kind of a person. And although I was fairly low key, when the rebellion was going on and the whole thing was happening, I was hanging out with the folks that were dealing a lot with the background stuff, if you will, working to help the process work through being support cast to people that were having important meetings about how we were going to proceed and not have everybody hate each other. So I don't want to go into the details that I do remember, and there was a lot that I was unaware of, I'm sure, but yeah. So, but you know, I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just wasn't a gray armband wearing person.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your path to knighthood, like how long it took, and
Yeah, well, it took 3 years. I mean, from my first event was that in 75, and I was knighted in 78. Interestingly enough, it wasn't like I was trying to do anything specific other than just, be as good as I could be. I was traveling a lot. After the trip with Steingram and everything, and then I ended back up in Portland and was hanging out with Steingram and Auden and the folks up here. I met Momfred. Momfred was Steingram's squire, and that's how I met Momfred. And then Momfred and I started traveling around a lot. We would drive down to West tournaments and up to all points in Ontier, and then Steingram was on the throne again, and so then we sort of became, support staff for him as prince as he was traveling around. So I was, you could say, actually, after Steingrim's, it might have been his third reign or second reign, or was it his first reign? I don't know. After he stepped down, anyway, his princess came up and presented Manfred and I with a bottle of wine to thank us for being such good squires to Steingrim. and I go, well, he's a squire. I'm just hanging out, But in essence, I was acting in that role without actually having officially been attached. So everybody sort of saw us as a package, I think, at that point in time.
Were you officially attached to anyone?
What's that?
Were you squire to someone?
I wasn't. No. It wasn't really that. A lot of people weren't squired. It wasn't that big of a thing in many ways. I mean, down in the West, people did a lot more, but there wasn't a very high density of knights when I started. I think, if we called them really seriously active, if there were 5 to 7 of them that were seriously active, there was Elrond, and Black Saber, and Edward Zafron up in Seattle, and not really anybody that I can think of in Lionsgate, nobody in Adiantum, Steingrim, Blackhand, Frederick in Three Mountains. Yeah, there just wasn't a lot of knights. So Jarl, but Jarl wasn't active at that point in time. Sir Auden, he was there too. Yeah, so anyway, yeah.
And then there came Sir Ulfred.
Well, at some point. So it was this is where I get my timelines wrong. But anyway, it was sort of fun. I won my we went up to Lionsgate for a coronet tournament, and it was raining like horrible. They called it Warner Float Park. But anyway, there was half the people at the event were the 3 of us that drove up from down here.
Oh, wow.
and there was nobody wanted to go out and hang out and watch the fighting, so it was just like there was 12 people there, but anyway, there were only like 6 or 7 of us that entered the coronet, and Edward Zafron was in it, and Dublin and me, and maybe Ludwig, and a couple of folks from up there, and maybe Bjorn of Havoc, and I'm not gonna remember the others, but anyway, I had a horrible earache, and so somebody had given me 292s, they're codeine laced Tylenol, so while I was just fighting, and I was sort of, quite honestly, not paying a lot of attention, and I get done with a fight, and Dublin comes right up and says, "You're in the finals with Edward." And it was like, what? Don't we have a lot more fighting to do? and it was okay. It wasn't much of a contest for Edward at that point, but so I got a silver rose out of that. Yeah, that probably was one of the things that impressed itself on me about this whole weather thing for coronets. But anyway, no. So anyway, my knighting was sort of fun because we were having coronation there, and Greyhelm and and his wife,
Verena.
Graham and Verena had come up and as king and queen of the West. And it's like, wow, we hardly ever get the king and queen of the West to come up, and what an honor, and it was very exciting and everything. And Steingrim and Geneltis were on the throne at the time. I was following Steingrim and Geneltis. So the ceremony, proceeds, and we get to the point where Steingrim is about to place the coronet on my head, and Graham stands up, says, "I have some business." And uh-oh, what did we do and everything? And he gets up and he says, whatever he said, because I don't actually remember, but he said basically, I don't want you to step up as unbelted and as Prince of Antir, and having consulted with the knights of the West and all that, I'm minded to elevate you to be a knight. And so they stopped the coronation and made me a knight, and then they put the circlet on my head to make me Prince of Antir. And so then I'm about to put the circlet on Valkyrie, Lady Valkyrie's head, and he jumps up again and says, "Stop!" And it's like, what? Who let this interfering king come up here? Oh, anyway, no thoughts like that, because Graham and Verena were very good friends by that point in time. But and they made Lady Valkyrie a pelican. So then I got to make a princess, and that was how our reign started there. But and then later that evening, they offered knighthood to Manfred, and he chose to become a master. So, but it was, for me, it was the love of just doing it and doing it, going out and fighting whoever was there and available, if you will. It was the challenge to try and excel in those situations, and to be happy even in defeat, because there's time we weren't wearing as much armor back then, and we were starting to learn how to hit pretty hard. And there were times when it was quite the honor to show all the black spots around your body, right? But then get up and go out and do it again tomorrow, right? Kind of a thing. So I was lucky. I was in Three Mountains, where there was not only several knights, there was also a fair number of other folks that we could work with, and we would do little backyard practice. I just, maybe a lot of times I'd go over and it'd be me and Manfred in his backyard, and we would work on stuff. And I was walking down hallways at work, and I'm practicing flat snaps as I'm walking down the hall, and trying to pick up new things. One of the kings of the West was Terence of Halliday, and he was using a style that was not very popular amongst a large set of folks in the West, but he was using a hanging guard and then a rotational snap, and which was good for offsides, or just very good for blocking and then snapping. And nobody did that, but he came up as incognito up to Antir for one of our coronets, and and just to see the folks and do pickups and stuff. And I thought, man, if this guy's doing this to all of us and it's so devastating, right in the middle of the fight, it's like, okay, I'm going to do it back to him and stuff. And that was the first time I ever used a hanging guard with a high elbow and on a rotational snap, and the funny thing is that I actually killed him. And which actually later on a trip down to the West, I wanted to enter the we were still Principality, I wanted to enter the lists. And back then you had to get permission if nobody knew you, right? And so I got drug up to the king, and they said, this young man from Ontier would like to enter the list, but we don't know him, and there's nobody to to vouch for him at this point and stuff. And Terrence was still king, but now he is king on the throne and everything. And he looks over at me, laughs, and he says, he killed whatever the pseudonym he was using, he can fight, So that was how they let me into the list down there. But yeah, so just experimenting, trying different things, and thinking. I thought a lot. Like I say, I thought, all through the waking moments, and I would experiment with motions. How can I make this thing move, and all that kind of stuff. So
when did you take your first student, your first squire? I don't even know who it was.
Well, I wasn't anxious to take on students, but I was happy to work with anybody that wanted, I wanted to help people get better, and so there wasn't really, and now I got to think about it. That was really, yeah, I don't keep the orders, but there was some folks I worked with that didn't stick around, and so and even as there were some squires that basically were transitory, and I always felt bad. I felt bad because I was enjoying working with them and stuff, and then just their lives took them away from the SCA, and right. I felt that loss, right? But the person that first, was really my real squire student, unless I'm forgetting somebody, and for which case I would have to apologize to them, but was really Fiach. And he actually had started out attached with someone else, but that wasn't working out well, just as a stylistic and endeavor and stuff. And I talked to him, and I said, I think you could be good, I think, and I would be happy to try and help you be good, and stuff. So we talked it over and everything, and then it was up to him. It was his decision if he wanted to become my squire and work on it. Squire didn't work so much with him for his Celtic persona, so he was Ulfred's man, not Ulfred's squire. But yeah. Oh, I do too remember who my first squires were. God damn, how could I forget that? Because it was at the coronation where I got knighted, and Jesus, space case. Two of the guys I was hanging out with at that point in time were, well, three guys actually, but the McFlandrys. So Robert McFlandry, Duncan McFlandry, and Kendrew McFlandry. And it was a shock to me, but Robert McFlandry and Duncan McFlandry both came up and said, I want to be your squire. And I said, okay. And they both could have made it, except things came up, and they're fighting here again didn't sustain.
Right.
and it was physical injury kind of stuff that interrupted their progress. So, yeah, and we palled around. I never thought of them as squires as much as I did as friends, and the other thing was that once they both decided not to continue on a path of trying to pursue knighthood and all that, I made them housecarls. So for the largest portion of our time, they were my housecarls and friends and drinking buddies and travel companions and stuff. So yeah.
And
sorry, Duncan, I totally should not have forgotten. But anyway, and for those that wouldn't know, Duncan McFlannery later became Duncan Ravensfury, or Dunketer, and I haven't talked to him for a while now, so I don't know what he's doing these days. But yeah, anyway,
Misty,
I feel bad because my memory is horrible. I have to really work to remember things. Anyway,
should we look at some pictures to kind of jog things?
well, that would help because I know some pictures that all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, there was that coronation. There was a picture of that. You might not have it, but there was a picture of that.
Okay.
There's Stangram and Lenora and Monfred and Morag, I would guess.
Oh.
And Ulfred and Semingo.
So these are, sorry, these are not in any particular order, so you'll have to pardon me. So this was, go ahead. Sorry, you were starting.
Oh, I was just, so on the far right of that picture is my Princess Semingo. And that would, of course, then to her right or left on the picture is me. And then Stangram and Lenora, King and Queen of the West, were there, and that's Monfred and Morag. So this would be the first kingdom crown, and this I would assume is where he's being acknowledged as the victor. But and I say that because I wouldn't have been prince with Semingo if it was coronation. So.
And this is some of your woodworking.
Yeah, the patents. So
they just kind of snuck in here among the pictures. Sorry about that. I love these. I love the hinged ones. Those are really cool.
Yeah, those were fun. Yeah.
Did you learn woodworking through the SCA, or was that a skill you had before?
No, I learned that through the SCA. I got interested in it as it's not that I didn't grow up around carpentry. My grandfather was a carpenter by trade, but I didn't ever really learn anything from him. It wasn't a thing that I was doing. Yeah. So this, I wouldn't remember which one this was, but given that we have Gerhard as a knight and Domeric and Theodulf and Scalanus, Blackhand, and Ludwig von Lemminghausen far left, and then Beric von Langenthal there. I would say this must have been probably the early 80s, because Beric, when did he move up here? Anyway, but yeah, I don't remember the event though.
It's a cool old picture.
It is.
I love this.
But you saw the blow up one, right? The life size one.
So for those of you who can't see, it says, "What would Ulfred do?" down here. And it was
Well, this is a life size. This is a photo of the life size blow up that they did from a photo. So this is a photo of a photo of a photo. That was when I was Prince the second time, I believe. So
it's awesome.
there's the family. So this was at this was at Ocean Shores, whatever we call that in the society. But and I was thinking it might have been Kingdom Feast, but it might have also, we might have had a coronation there, a 12th night there, so it could be 12th night too. And one of those rare occasions where I had the boys and all the boys. So
Yeah, there are more in this series.
yeah.
We'll get to them later.
Me as a much younger man. What you don't see there is we have that nice white background because I was standing in front of my nice Coleman tent.
Have you always fought with a heater shield?
No, I did primarily fight with heater during the Principality days. And this was one that I used for quite a while. That's a steel heater, a little large for on-tier standards, and about 16 pounds. I didn't move it around a lot, but it was during that era when I was using more of a hanging guard. So a lot of the head shots I was blocking with sword strikes, and then just using the heater more for a lower. At some point, probably not long after this, in fact, maybe very soon after this photo, I moved to a much smaller, flat plywood heater, rimmed heater, and it made me a little more mobile and a little more aggressive with shield blocks rather than passive. So it was something where I could do more of Paul's kind of a thing where you would punch block into the blow instead of just waiting to receive it. And so I really, yeah, it was a good move. When I first started, they had a series of just available for folks to use in the Three Mountains area. They had dished steel round shields that were 24 inches across, and they weighed a ton, and they really were hard to block your legs with, because if you blocked your leg successfully, you were never getting that shield back up in time to block anything else, just because of the weight. But so I used those in the first few months, but this was 12th night down in Portland, where we did it at the Masons Hall, and the big Masons Hall in downtown Portland. And I think in honor of Lenora and Steingrum's reign, maybe we were doing a little later period costuming. So this was a little departure from the Norse. And this somewhat looks like it could have been about the time of our wedding, but I'm not sure.
I love this picture because you look so serious. Doug is so conscious that someone's taking his picture.
Fiat's hair is epic.
Yeah. That was my big glasses phase, right?
Yes, it was.
This could be at Eagles, given those trees behind there, but I don't know. I think that's Dak's tent we're standing around. So could have been a lot of things, but Fiat was with me as my man at that point. That's nice. A little later.
That's Sven and
because there's all
Siggy's.
that steel out.
Yeah, it's Sven and Signy's first reign.
Ah, okay. So, oh, there's Colgrim up on the upper right there.
Yeah.
No, you-
Yep.
I hadn't realized that the Circle of Steel dated this far back. I don't remember it this early.
It wasn't a circle of steel originally. It was the blades presented so that the prince could hold on to the tips. And there just weren't that many tips to hold on to. But once it got to a certain size, if you were going to keep on the tradition, it turned into a big circle of steel. and honestly, you know, it didn't look so dangerous when it was just a few of us. But tradition, you know.
Yeah.
So this is Ampri of Black Lion. Steingram and I were invited to be marshals for the event. So we were there to, as the marshals being judges. So there were 4 judges, and you were the notables who they advertised for the event. And by the way, that has been for a long time, even though I haven't gone in many years now, but one of my favorite events. And I'm priest of the Black Lion. Even though I've only ridden a horse twice in my life.
You look very handsome in the on-preview picture.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous shot of you.
Yes, it really is.
That's why I pulled it. And there's a boy in his knight.
Yeah, this was where was that crown at? It might have been up Madrona area. Yeah.
Vic one?
Huh?
Is that the one Vic one up in the mountains?
I didn't think it was in the mountains. I thought my memory was that it was mostly just flat fields.
Well, it was up by Ispaw.
Oh yeah, that could be. It feels about right. Yeah.
Oh, and then some of your woodworking.
Yeah, that's more recent stuff. That it's a little bowl that that lid on that bowl, that lid, and I made I think 3 bowls and 2 lids before I got this pair to go together. But anyway, and I experimented with some turning some cutting boards. So that was one of my favorites. Just for the look, I really liked that wood and the detailing. That's still sitting around here in the house.
You wax it to finish?
Yeah, in this case, I used a spoon wax, so it's a beeswax and mineral oil, and maybe, I think that's all it's in this formula. It's not one I made, it's one I obtained from a person that produces it, but sometimes they add a little carnauba wax. That's a yarn bowl, knitting for knitters. So
Very pretty.
and that actually was a rebuild of Dak's original shaving horse. And it had seen a lot of wear, and so I refurbished it and was testing it out there after I got done. So
Super cool.
that's yeah, that bowl in the background there actually started life as a lid. And I decided that it wasn't good as a lid, but it made a good shallow bowl. Artistic because it has that big missing chunk on the side where the bark was. And that would be Merowyn's knighting scroll.
Super cool.
Yeah, that's a nice nice hickory, the wood that it's made out of. Yeah, the lid top is actually not hickory. It is poplar, I believe. And Ludviga did the scroll, the calligraphy, and so that was a fun project.
Look at the beautiful pegs there. Oh,
Yeah. As you can tell, I got recently into bowls. That is
Oh, sorry.
that was made for me. That's this one right here. That was commissioned by my friends, Fjorleaf and Connor, I believe, were the primary artists on that.
Yeah.
And that was, quite the present.
It's beautiful.
It is. I really like it. There's me and my young lady. I don't remember if we were married at that point yet. But and Thorin, one of my favorite people.
Mine too.
Some kind of Rangian thing going on there. Are we inducting Garen into the group or something?
That's a big horn.
Yeah, that's some serious drinking going down there.
And we've got Grendel, you, Dak, Steingrim. I don't know who this is.
That sort of looks like that could be Valtor, I think was his name. Looks like Thorgir back behind. Well, I think that's Garen back. Yeah, right there. It looks like. And it looks like in front of me, on the other side of me, is a Whedon, right there. Yeah. So.
Anyway, cool shot. Aw.
Now this is our wedding. So. And that was up at Athol. At a crown.
She's so beautiful.
It really is. Oh, sorry. Rangians again.
Yeah, we must have been swearing something to somebody because we're putting our swords away.
Oh, there.
Oh, that's a much more recent picture.
Yeah, so cute.
So,
And this is at Sport of Kings.
it is, yeah. And there's Kjartan and Ishvan, me, and I shouldn't space the name.
Waylon.
Okay. Yeah,
Waylon.
Waylon, yeah.
So tell us about Sport of Kings. How did that idea come about?
So how did it come about? It sort of came about probably at one of our project nights over at College and Olin's, where I had been talking about. I have these flights of imagination where I envision, wouldn't it be cool if we could do something like this? And this is one of those. And it was, I felt like we needed something to sort of boost our individual combat skill enthusiasm, if you would. I had been hearing for a couple of years that we just didn't have enough wars in Ontir, and we weren't very good war fighters, and we needed more wars. And whereas I saw the world a little more like, I felt like our fighting community for individual skills had been sort of going a little fallow. I sat down and looked on the calendar, and we had 22 wars a year in Ontier. That didn't sound like we don't have enough wars. It sounded like we had plenty of wars. You know,
maybe too many.
Maybe too many. Actually, I did put that forth too, but I wasn't out trying to address the war situation. Most of the places that have a really big war, that's what they have, a really big war, and they don't have a bazillion border skirmishes, but that's neither here nor there. It might all be different these days, but the whole thing with Sport of Kings is also was there was, it came together with several things. One, I also didn't like that it felt like we couldn't do certain kinds of things because every event had to be the same pattern. So you had to have archery and equestrian and thrown weapons and etc. Right? And I felt that so much more could be achieved if we could have an event that was very much focused on the individual prowess and chivalry and just what it meant to epitomize, you know, the dream of, let's say, what we all fell in love with from like the concept of the Tolkien-esque oath of chivalry that we swear, right? You know, it's a high concept that exists there. It's not just swinging a stick good, and so this was this, and then we started talking about it, talking with the household, and folks all started throwing in different things, right? They had things that they had envisioned. Wouldn't it be cool if, you know, that kind of stuff. So sort of a brainstorming session, and you know, I should practice this story so it would just roll off my tongue. So, but anyway, so what it came down to is that really got me focused on, well, what would this event be if he was going to really do this? You know, what would it be? What would it look like? And how would it feel and stuff? And what would it take to get it going and everything? And so and I haven't said it yet, but one of the things too is I wanted our good fighters to share the stuff that made them good fighters with everybody, with all of the fresh young fighters, you know, or not even, they don't have to be fresh and young. They can be old and cantankerous and looking to revive their careers. That's fine too. But those that were successful, I wanted them to share that success, the knowledge of what it took to have that success with those that have yet to be successful. And that was sort of a large part of the concept. So, but I didn't want it to be a boot camp. I didn't want it to be a big fighting practice, because to me, it's about the chivalry and the pageantry and the dress up and stuff. It's not just guys with sticks. We're not the dog boys or whatever they call themselves that meet in warehouses and hit each other with, you know, sticks. And so I wanted to bring that in. I wanted to make it also not, I wanted to be, so anyway, I settled on, let's make it about the tournament, right? Because like I said, people were saying we don't have enough wars and stuff. And I thought, well, what we really don't have is the big marquee tournaments either. We don't have what's the ones that you guys went down to, Ashaxi in the west, like the Krapad or
Provadura.
Yeah, that was that one. You know, there was no sort of signature ones. Eagles had been that way at one point, and still was big and an important event and everything. But there was a time in Ontier where Eagles was an interkingdom tournament. It brought folks up from the west and folks down from the far reaches of northern Ontier to all come together there and compete. And you know, people didn't need to travel that far to have good competition, I think, and so it sort of wasn't quite that multi-kingdom event anymore. And so that's where I ended up on the concept of Sport of Kings. And so it had to be sort of set up, and basically what I had to pitch it to the local barony, because you know, you have to have a sponsoring
Branch.
group and everything, and you need to have some infrastructure to make things like that run. And but what I was willing to do is I was willing to foot the bill. You know, you know, whatever it costs to put it on, I was willing to do that. Now it turns out I didn't have to fully foot the bill or anything. You know, the barony was happy to pitch in and do things, but that's how important it was to me. It was, you know, get that off the ground and not starve it right out of the gate. So that meant we had to recruit people, instructors. I really wanted to have Paula Beltrix come up and be sort of a marquee person. He had been very influential throughout my time in the SCA, and was fundamentally a sound system that he used, you know, that had a long track record of success. So, but I also didn't want to just make this basically all focused on one person. I wanted to get as broad a representation as I could. And I also wanted to really pull in the Knights of Ontier. So I leaned on all of my friends to participate, to be instructors. And when I say leaned, it didn't really take much. What was amazing is everybody I approached, they were like happy to help, just tell them what I wanted them to teach. They didn't have things, so I was, you know, so I over and over it was like, well, when I think of your fighting, this is what I think about, you know, that's special about what you know, what you do when you're fighting, right? Here's a thing that I've heard you tell people, and I've always been, you know, inspired by your words and those kinds of, you know. And I wasn't blowing smoke. I was seriously, each person I approached, I tried to think, well, what is there about this person that I think is sort of theirs rather than just what everybody has? Right. And I suggested, you know, if they didn't have something they already wanted to do, I would then suggest, you know, well, here's what I think you could share. And that worked actually very well. You know, it was, I think people responded well to that. And later on, they might go, you know, that just didn't feel right to me, but I'd love to do it again. And I would, but here's what I'd love to do, you know. And that's like, hey, great, you know. It's so.
And it's developed into such a juggernaut of an event, and it's fostered so much teaching in SCA wide. People call it the fighting Disneyland.
We were very generous in many regards to trying to relieve people of all concerns of just taking care of themselves on the weekend. You know what so one of the things that made this event work right out of the gate was having the Virgin Countess.
Right.
And that was by design, right? we wanted to have a schedule that was back to back to back to back. So there wasn't 15 minutes or a half hour or an hour between activities. You went from one class to the next class, or you just didn't take a class in an hour. You know, you weren't required to take classes back to back, but everybody wanted to.
Yeah.
And so so on that basis, we realized that there's not going to be time for people to do a bunch of cooking, you know, and just a whole variety of things like that. For people that were traveling to come there, there wasn't going to be opportunities for them to bring all of their gear necessarily. So we have a robust loaner tent program, right? Housing program, if you will, for people that are traveling from a long ways away. And the food, the goal on the food was, we're not merchants. We're not here to make a big profit off of our food. We're here to give everybody, you know, good food at basic cost so that they can afford it, so that it's there. And you know, the logistics that goes into the VC is of itself tremendous. So, you know.
I was looking for some other Sport of Kings photos, and
This
is another Sport of Kings. No,
I'm not sure. I mean,
that's Christian. I think it's a coronation, maybe.
Yeah, because Edward the Stuffy didn't tend to come to Sport of Kings often. But,
oh, I didn't even recognize him. I was focused on Christian.
Yeah.
I do have more pictures of Sport of Kings, though. Let me find them. We'll come back to these. So there's a great one.
What are we doing there? This must be, addressing, Olin is doing the talking, I think. This is coordination, letting folks know what's about to happen on the fighting field, basically. So. Looks like a lot of standing around, but sometimes getting 200 fighters all on the same page can take a while.
And this is another huge part of Sport of Kings, is having the cathedral there, and the ambiance is just, it's so amazing.
Well, and the additions, the stuff that Matthias put together to just enhance the Sport of Kings is amazing. The if you have one of the blue.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to that. Sorry.
All the banners that were made for it too, and
yeah. So the thing about it is, it managed to really strike a spirit within a lot of people who just gave of themselves so much. All of the banners for Sport of Kings, which are beautiful and add so much to the pageantry and everything, were done for us by Alana Wolfston, and she is the person that puts them up, takes them down. Well, her and John, and takes them down and keeps them clean and stores them. we don't even have possession of them in between times. They are the ones. They are the keepers. They were the producers, and you know, so and like we showed Matthias Bain doing, you know, the court with the cathedral and what do we call the annex? But anyway. And these the flagging here, the banner, that was a group effort with members of the barony and the household and folks that all got together and made that flagging just for Sport of Kings, although the barony uses it for other things too now, which is, that stuff's built to be used. So, but and then I don't even remember for sure who did the little field markers, whether that Shaxi, you might know who worked on those.
I have no idea.
Yeah, but
Okay, so I'm gonna go back and catch some of these pictures that we missed. So sorry for flipping so fast through these. Okay, so we're gonna jump around a little bit. I apologize. I have no idea what this is, but it looks old and I thought you would want to talk about it.
well, I'm king with Adara, it looks like there. And so that's the McFlandry Guard with the Lochaber axes behind us there. This would have been in the third reign of Huntier. I believe that this is Three Mountains.
Yeah.
So a Three Mountains event. And it's likely that it would just be a midwinter's feast of some sort, given that we're inside and all. I really don't recall the. This is a little. So, at one point in time, with Olin and Freddie, Sir Frederick, and Sir Octamasades and a few other folks, just to sort of help the guys along. I said, well, let's do a traveling road show. And the first one that we did, we went up to Spokane, because I'd heard that Sven wasn't getting much opportunity to really push himself in the local practices and stuff. I have no idea if that was true, but that's what I heard. So and so I got a hold of Sven and talked about bringing up a carload of guys. Actually, we took 2 cars to come up and just have a practice on a Saturday. And then since why waste the opportunity, got a hold of folks in Wastekeep. In particular, Skeggy was living in Wastekeep at the time. Duke Skeggy was there, and he wasn't getting the practice he wanted. So on Sunday, we stopped off there on the way home, and we had another practice with all the folks there. And everybody liked it. It was a good time and a lot of fun. And so we did another. Then Barrick and Liesel asked if we would do a traveling show down into the summits, and we did that, and they hosted us down there, and that was fun. So then we got asked by another group in summits to come down and do another traveling practice, and that's what this picture is. So all of that lead up is just for a couple of years there, we were doing these traveling fighting practices, basically. In this case, they wanted a little more formal teaching, so I was actually doing a lot more teaching rather than just showing up and being a participant. But in this case, there was, I don't know, I think it was Amalric driving, but we came down with a van of folks, and they put us up for the day, in this case. And this was what, 12th night? Yeah. Looking at the background there. And that's a nice picture, isn't it?
It is. So this is at Sport of Kings again.
Yep. And this is one of the more recent ones, because that's the gallery I was talking about, the or annex, whatever, but the blue and white awning that goes out, stretches out from the cathedral here. And
I think this must be a coronation.
Oh, I guess it must be.
oh yeah, it would have to be, wouldn't it? Same place.
Yeah. I think there was a coronation at that site.
I don't remember.
No, there definitely was a coronation there, and we would have used all the same equipment.
And then we're back to Christian.
Yep.
And
This is on Tier West War, but I wasn't doing fighting at that point in time. I'm hanging out at Barrack and Liesl's, I suspect.
carving away.
Yep, having a good time. Now this is, I think this is a different event than that previous one. This looks like Iron and Ink. Iron and Ink is a nice little arts event out in Moses Lake. What's that group's name?
I can't remember.
Yeah. That was an old picture.
Sorry, this is stuck in the middle of the Iron and Ink pictures, but
Yeah, no, that's fine. This was Thorin's coronation. So that's the VG walking him in. And this is out at Grand Thing.
Okay.
And Sven Odenai was doing a arts and crafts setup at the event, and I was participating in that, demoing the spring pole lathe for folks.
Did you build that?
I did. I took a class. That was Roy Underhill came out here to Portland to teach a class, and that's a direct copy of his spring pole lathe that he did on some of his shows. And
Very cool.
Oh, sorry. Let's go back to Daden.
This is Hawksguard that was there midwinters, and we just went up for that part of the event. I think we drove home since it's close. It was an opportunity to hang with friends and meet some new friends, meet the folks in the Hawksguard there.
Sorry.
And that's up in so that must be Moot.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like 20 years ago, Moot.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, looking at Charlie there. 12. So some of those other youngsters.
Kind of cool.
And that was my original little tent. Well, actually, it's a later incarnation of the original little tent. Still out in my storage shed.
Sorry. Okay, so we saw these already.
So the tent there, the wood frame tent, was interesting. That
The one that you built?
yeah, so we was it eagles and or a crown. I don't remember which, but anyway, we were in our Norse A-frame, and we were on the driving home from the event talking about the lack of headroom in a Norse A-frame, and I was driving, I was thinking, and I said, Elfrida, I think I can give us a tent that will give you more floor space. And I designed this in my head on the drive home from the event, and got right to work. And I think it was 6 weeks later was on Tier West War, or maybe Yeah, maybe it was coming home from a crown or something. But anyway, and I had the first cut done. This being a subsequent version of it, but
And now
didn't
everybody's got them.
yeah, I didn't have a door on it. I just had a tarp, but it worked, and our bed could fit in there, and we could still walk around and get dressed and have tables and stuff. And then I added the door later, and it's so cool to have a door. Now it has 2 doors, front and back. So this would be looks like Van's knighting.
So Van is your
Well,
Grand Squire?
he's sort of a, if I recall correctly,
He was Einar's squire, wasn't he?
he was Einar's squire,
Okay.
right? And Einar was attached to Skepti originally, and
Oh,
then
that's right.
and then Olin. So anyway, doesn't matter. He's in the that chain there is the chain that all of the knights of my household have been knighted with. So well, I might have to accept Fiach from that, because I don't think it started that
He
early.
always gets left out.
Well, he was so singular, right? He was the 30-year knight. He was knighted at 30-year. He was the only one knighted at 30-year, and that took a long
Buffett known
time.
around the world.
Huh?
I said the Buffett known around the world.
Yeah. and it took a while before I had squires again. So that was a commission from my wife. She wanted a large to do
Inkle
ribbon.
card weaving?
Yeah, it's an inkle loom. Yeah, an enormous inkle loom. And this is my Laureline, I believe, from Vic and
Astrid. I love this shot.
Yeah, I like that picture too. Looks like the Old West, doesn't it? Look at that casualness there.
Olin looks like he's gonna take apart whoever's taking the picture.
Yeah.
Opta doesn't look like he's aged at all.
Yeah, that's why
Does he?
people think that I'm his mom. It's awesome.
Don't know what's going on there.
I can hear him laughing upstairs.
No. That was at Ontario West War too, just kicking back there.
And she's your most recent squire to have been knighted, correct?
Yes, and I don't have any more on deck, so she'll probably be Omega.
Aw.
There's Steingram and Dak wrestling in the boats while I watch on. Torgal is cuddled up there and casually steering.
I love this because you're like ever watchful over here. And this is Optimus and Torfin fighting.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to think on who it was in the green, but
Yeah, it's been a while since he's been in armor.
yeah.
This is a great shot. This is your lion.
I This would have been a pelican.
Oh, pelican. Okay.
Mhm.
I thought they did your lion.
Davin.
Oh, okay. Fiak announcing you, probably.
Oh, for the pelican, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is so
Who's taking me down there?
it's oh, I'm blanking on his name. The gentleman that was in the photo with you and Dayaden.
Oh, Jeremy, but yeah,
That's one of his kids. So this is a while ago.
it is. Yeah.
But it's the best picture. There's a whole series of them. And this is Matthias getting knighted.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a buffet there, but it looked like he was taking a swing with his arm.
Yeah, I don't know if that was I don't know what that is.
He's just talking.
With his hands, I don't know.
Yep.
And this is back to Sport of Kings.
Yep.
And
directing. Earlier on, I got more active in the directing and waving my arms around.
And this is behind the scenes at Sport of Kings.
Yeah, this was our registration setup discussion.
So much work, that event.
Yes, people don't understand just how much anxiety that this part of it created for me and a lot of other people. Probably I didn't help other people a lot. But it was important to me to have that part go well.
Yeah.
And, so. And this
Fair in the Grove?
Fair in the Grove, yes. And I really always had a good time there. You get all, and there's you just see his head there, but I would have the kids and let them go ahead and do some turning on the
I bet
since
this
it's a demo, so they're just random kids.
I think this is Ben and Luke, because this is
Oh, that could be, yeah, Ben and Luke there, and then this would be another one, but yeah, because the back of the head there looks like Ben.
Yeah.
Or is that Luke? Luke was the
Luke is large and Ben is blonde.
yeah.
Oh, and this you fighting?
Yeah, I'm just trying.
I have no idea.
Looks like you're going for a nice shield hook there.
Yeah.
Either that or I was gonna come back in with a wrap.
So that ends the pictures. I'll stop sharing now.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, yes. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that was vacation slides. You know, oh God, do I have to keep listening to this guy? not another slide of Majorca.
I don't know. Putting that slideshow together, I got all teary because just seeing the joy and the effect that you've had on the game and how integral, I mean, just for me personally, how integral you've been in my journey and how many other people you have touched was just like, wow. Pretty cool.
It's always really just been about the people, right? I mean, without the people, it's not anything that I probably would have stuck around for. And it really gives me, it's Ontier is like my family. And of course, these days there's a lot of cousins I don't really know, but I always considered myself sort of a homebody knight, right? I didn't travel off to the big wars a lot. In the early days, I went down to the west a fair amount, but at that point in time, that was the family. We were part of that, and then when we got separate and then big, it became on tier and so yeah, it's
I think with Sport of
no,
Kings, you've really done a lot to bring all of us back together, and it's been a really strong unifying event.
It's always, it's like every time I'm shocked, but that it's like, wow, that was another big success, and it's a big success because the spirit that the people bring to it, right? It's and by the way, I tried to talk about that earlier, but I didn't really. But I think a lot of that can come from that focus, and it's one of the reasons that I like Priest of the Black Lion, also because it's another focused event like that. It has a very specific kind of ambiance, and it's built even around a very specific historical treatise on how that kind of an event should be run. And Sport of Kings doesn't have the historical basis that Priest does, but it also has that same kind of focus, right? To bring the people together, to keep people busy. It sounds silly, but people seem to have a much better time when they always have something going on. But it's not like they're bad. It's not like, oh, I got to go to another meeting kind of busy, right? It's the I'm busy doing something that I really want to do kind of busy.
It's follow your passion busy.
Busy, yeah. And so, yeah. And, I never did make any progress, but with pursuing it, but I had wanted to always do something similar for like blacksmithing or woodworking or crafting, basically. It's like, man, we could do a crafting, but there's so much more logistics involved in a crafting activity, particularly if you're doing the heavy stuff where you're going to have metal smithing and or woodworking and stuff, but
the dirty arts.
The dirty arts, yeah. Although this is why I like Iron and Ink, another event that I've always enjoyed, even though it's not very largely known or attended. You get some really good folks that go to those and share their passions, and you get some really good students there who are there to learn and be impassioned, So I really like those focused events. The rubber stamp, the fractals, I call them fractals, right? This is what the Kingdom tournament looks like, or Crown event. This is what it looks like. This is what they do there. Oh, well, we need to do an event locally. Well, it needs to look like Crown, just smaller, right? And then, I'm down a little shire. Well, we need to do just like the Barony did, only smaller. I think of those as fractals. And
I think there's something to be said for a narrow focused event and to let people immerse themselves in a specific activity. And that way you can actually discover things that you wouldn't at a fractal event, because everything is fractured, right?
Right, yeah. For me, it's like, I enjoy archery and I enjoy a whole broad range of things, but I can never go and do all of those things. It's at one event. We participated in a couple of local archery events too over the years, that just to help out, and I thought they had great potential. They didn't continue on. But apparently not broad enough interest in that regards. But yeah, I think you're right. When you can really get immersed in that one activity, you can find a spark that might not otherwise, you might get distracted from. I guess, in a broader sense. So, and by the way, and I think you two know this, but I always resisted. I would be approached a lot by the various other activities, saying, you know, the equestrian, or for a long time the rapier or the archers. And I, you know, told them, you know, that as much as I think those are noble pursuits and everything, they, you know, I have a very specific focus that we're doing here, and that takes a lot of additional resources that and strain. You know, we would have to find different sites for if we were going to do that, and so yeah.
I'm really thankful that it's kept a very narrow focus. I think that's been really important to the integrity of the event.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you can see the comments, Ulfred, but Clay,
no, I can't.
Duke Eric is chiming in. He's watching. He says hi.
Oh, hello. I follow him.
So
well, I can't say I follow him, but I mean, yeah, one of my favorites. So,
Rifkin, do you have any more questions?
No, I guess not. No.
We're at about 2 hours, which is kind of amazing. I think we could go 2 more hours, but we won't keep you up all night.
well, I hope the Earth is patient, because as an ox, I'm really slow. So, you know. But
are you born in the year of the ox?
no, I think something else, but I don't remember what.
What were you going to say, Rifkin?
I was just going to thank you for making sure that knowledge is passed on in the fighting community. That's one of the things I think that Sport of Kings has really done very well in our kingdom, is to facilitate more teaching and more structured teaching. And we still, you know, and we put value on our older fighters who maybe not in their prime anymore, but still have a lot of value in teaching. And I think that's sort of unique. And I think that has a lot to do with you putting emphasis on passing down the knowledge and showing respect to the people that have the knowledge, even if they aren't completely active as fighters. So I just really want to thank you for that. I've talked to a lot of Dukes over the last 4 months, and I honestly believe that Antir is uniquely situated in that regard.
Well, thank you. That's, you know, high praise. Because I know you I've always admired what you've done for the, you know, the fighting with your efforts in bringing in folks to share their knowledge and stuff, because that has that sustained ongoing throughout a year kind of an effort is a thing that can keep the fires going. You know, I mean, 2 years for Sport of Kings, everybody gets excited and looks forward to it, but you know, a lot of those people will forget if they don't have things to keep them going. So that's, you know, it's a thing that I've always admired.
Yeah,
know.
it all builds on each other, right? Like we all the different efforts shape our culture, and I think building all those efforts together have really put us in a unique position culturally to have a culture of learning. And I just really appreciate sort of the way that you birthed that, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure there's a better analogy, but I'll just leave it there.
Well, you know, so I don't know. I always was pleased with the fact that at one point in time, you know, when I was young, Manfred and Stangram and I, we were sort of having a lot of success within the principality, and then our offspring had a lot of success in the early years of the kingdom. But anyway, but Three Mountains was sort of this place where that's where the princes were coming from for a while there, and then it shifted, you know, and the princes were coming from Madrona and other places, and I looked at Three Mountains area in Stromgard, and I said, we've got some damn fine fighters here. Why aren't they doing more? Yeah. And I made it a goal to try and revive our enthusiasm locally and refocus each other. And that wasn't Sport of Kings. That was just me leaning on the guys. So it did. It worked. You know, it doesn't matter. It's nice that they respected me enough to believe me when I, you know, tell them that, you know, you could be a contender, you know. Believe in yourself. And come out to practice. Don't be a slacker.
Well, thank you for touching so many lives.
You know, thank you for having me on and walking me through memory lane. And, you know, God, I need to practice my memory, you know. I need to review my photo albums, I guess.
I think that you did better than I would have done. So I don't remember anything. So thank you very much for agreeing to do this and for giving us your time.
Yeah,
Okay.
much appreciated.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, you all stay safe out there, and I'll look forward to when I can see you.
Definitely. Dawn, Shaxi, did you want to talk about the new show on Sunday?
Yes. On Sunday, we won't be doing the interviewing. Duchess Dagmar from Ontier and Sir Joel from Callantir now, formerly of Artemisia, are going to be doing interviews with members of the Order of the Rose. The show is going to be called Grace Under Pressure. And the first interview will be with Duchess Mary Grace on Sunday at 5 o'clock. And I will get the flyer up for that and the event created probably tomorrow. It's been a weird couple of days. But we're really excited about that. They're going to be doing weekly interviews, and it'll give a chance for the people that inspire our game to shine. So.
And next week, we're talking to one of my favorite people, Duchess Mari, who is a Laurel Pelican Viscountess by right of arms and a knight, and a duchess. So, you know, she's the whole shebang. And that should be super interesting. So tune in next week. And thank you again, Ulfred. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Stay safe.